this and that. So on the way back, I just started reading all the adverts, and we'd start, get a phone booth, call somebody up, yeah, the bike's still for sale, we would drive there. So we ended up doing this zigzag all the way back to New York. We bought a whole bunch of motorcycles on the way back. We had 4 bikes crushed into the back, and we had a Sportster hanging on one of those scoops on the back, so it was quite a parade, this huge ambulance going along with all these bikes in it. Didn't get pulled over too often, and I made it back to the city, and those bikes really started the whole buying and selling of the motorbike thing, because we fixed them up and sold them. One of them was an incredible chopper, which we put together. We were going to make it in a Triton, and then we didn't, and this guy Eddie Kramer showed up. It's also in one of the magazines, and he wanted it built as the chopper that it was. So we put it together at giant ape hangers, and it was a nice pre-unit 1960 Bonneville thing, and it went into the Javits Centre to the show there, and it won first place in the Cycle World People's Choice thing. So the publicity we got from that was enormous, and that got us like a lot of people noticing the shop. It was quite remarkable how that works. Like, you don't see publicity, but if it comes and you let it happen, it really does work for you. So people started coming around and wanting bikes and stuff. And then one day this guy George Pop showed up. He was an older guy. I had known him because he was the guy that I bought my first Triumph from, the 66, that went back a few years. And he'd been following our progress as a shop. And he walked in one day and said, "You guys are the only game in town." I'll never forget this. And he said, "But what you don't got is money. I've got $10,000 and we are partners." And like fools, we went, $10,000? Wow. Straight away we invited him right in. It was the worst mistake of my life. He became the 3rd partner in the shop because he had the dough. But what he did have was this wherewithal to find motorcycles. He would post adverts in the Penny Savers, the One Ad Press, special interest vehicles, all upstate and stuff like that. And the phone began to ring, and it was unbelievable. With this guy, we bought anywhere up to about 200 motorcycles. In the first 3 or 4 years of my kid's life, my son, we spent the whole time on the road. He was in the baby seat. We were going 100 miles here, 200 miles there, and we bought every single motorcycle on the planet. We packed the basement. We rented a basement in Brooklyn. We packed that with this huge number of motorcycles that were all available in everybody's backyard. It was amazing. I thought, how come all these people have these motorcycles? Like, if you were from Scotland and you were done with your motorcycle, you'd have to sell it. You couldn't just get another one and roll that one in a garage. But over here it was like everybody seemed wealthier or able to do that. So all these guys would get a Triumph, brand new out of the dealer. They get the 6-over front end, they get the baby ape hangers, they put a sissy bar on the back and a king queen seat, and then they put the 16-inch Harley wheel on the back, and every bike looked like that. They'd have this bar across the front, they'd ride a fucking thing like this. It was just horrible. So every bike we bought looked like that. They weren't choppers, they were just stock bikes that the front end was way up this high, you know. So we got hundreds of them, and we changed them around, and back then the thing to do was to make them look like this. You would just strip it down, make a kind of bare bones Triumph that looked like a Triumph that would run good, and all you had to do was just take their shit off, really, and you had a bike like that. So people started to really like that, namely because we were all riding them around, and they wanted one, so they could get one. So the shop really grew up. The relationship with this guy and his ability to find motorcycles was uncanny. I mean, you name it, we bought it. Everything from Velisets to, I mean, just any kind of name, any brand, we got one of them through the shop and fixed it up and sold the thing. So things expanded at that point. Moving on into the early 90s. Page 1's done. If you're bored, let me know. We can interrupt this diatribe anytime you want.
Hugh, I guess the chopper that you built with the pre-unit motor, is that the one that Paul Cox did the first seat on? And
yeah.
It works.
What's the question?
I want to know, is it, oh, I'm sorry.
The chopper that he had in the Javits, his first one that you guys built, the pre-unit,
That's the one with the crucifix gas tank and the Paul Cox seat, and one of the early Paul Cox.
It's downstairs.
That's the one we have in the basement, right? Damn, that thing is beautiful, man.
It's beautiful. It was more beautiful. I can clarify that. Originally, it had a little Sportster tank on it that had a rose, and the guy had it painted. And when we put it in the Cycle World show, it still had that beautiful Sportster tank on it. The bike looked good. Paul made a seat. Paul Cox had moved into the shop by this time, and he was making seats. He made one for me, he made me a set of bags, and I was like, dude, you gotta do this for a living. If Paul's here, which I doubt, he really did start his shit off down in the shop, and he made the seat for that bike, which was cool. It had little gold tips at the end of it. I don't know if they're still on it. It was a pretty cool piece. Anyway, Eddie wanted to style it his way. He wore sneakers. He had giant white sneakers, and he made the ape hangers come back like this, and he'd sit on the bike, and he was really tall, and he put the crucifix tank on it, and then he got like a 6-foot sissy bar and put on. Fucked the bike up completely. Anyway, he was a nice guy. He did road racing and RC30.
With a full-face helmet.
With a riding a chopper with a fucking full-face helmet. That was a styling cue, and those big fat white sneakers at the time. This is early Nike days when they were really out there. Alrighty.
Did you build that bike and put it in the show?
It coincided the time that it got built, the show came up, and we thought, fuck it, let's put it in there, and that just all clicked right there and then. So, yeah, kind of, you know. Alright, moving on along here. We're getting into the 90s, which is a good time. Early 90s, this New Zealand guy showed up. It was the, let me get this right, it was the Brooklyn Bridge 100th anniversary. So I'm not sure what date that was. Anyway, he sailed a tall ship from New Zealand all the way to Puerto Rico, where they all gathered in a harbour, and then they all came up like a giant flotilla into New York City, and it was amazing. There was just hundreds of tall ships in the harbour, and he came in on one and jumped ship and ended up in Manhattan like a refugee. Very quickly found a shop and started working with us, and he was a great